I understand, but still, he has to know his place and the damage he may be doing to the other people. So that ultimately when
Hollywood remembers Martin Scorsese as the godfather of modern cinema, the man who turned crime, morality, and madness into art. Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed. Every one of his films carved deep scars into the fabric of American storytelling. But behind those cinematic triumphs lies a story far more turbulent than any script he ever wrote. A story of brilliance clashing with ego, of friendships born in fire and destroyed in silence. In FOR decades, Scorsese's name stood for perfection, a director who demanded nothing less than emotional truth from his actors, even if it broke them. He was the man who could pull a masterpiece out of chaos. But what happens when the chaos stops serving the art and starts consuming the artist? That's the question Scorsese had to face, again and again. NHI's sets were battlegrounds of genius and madness. To outsiders, they looked like places where magic was made. But to those inside, they were war zones of obsession, where tempers flared and egos collided with devastating force. It wasn't just filmmaking, it was survival. Every scene, every take, was a test of willpower, a duel between Scorsese's vision and the actor's identity. And over the years, he worked with Hollywood's greatest, but greatness, he learned, came with a price. Robert De Niro's method acting transformed him into a monster of realism, so intense that it began to suffocate the crew. Sharon Stone's stardom brought glamour and destruction in equal measure. Leonardo DiCaprio's hunger for control nearly shattered their creative bond before it began. Joaquin Phoenix's perfectionism turned collaboration into therapy. Mickey Rourke's addiction dragged brilliance into the gutter. Jack Nicholson's ego blurred the line between authenticity and danger. And Joe Pesci, once Scorsese's closest ally, delivered the kind of betrayal no artist forgets. Every one of them left a mark on him. Every project was a war he barely survived. But Scorsese kept filming, kept pushing, because he believed that true art was worth pain. Yet, as time went on, he began to realize a haunting truth. Some actors weren't worth the chaos they brought. Talent without humility wasn't genius. It was destruction in disguise. Hollywood celebrates Scorsese's perfectionism, but few understand the toll it took on his soul. Behind those Oscars and standing ovations is a man who has walked through hell for the sake of his craft. He's seen friends turn into strangers, collaborators into enemies, and his passion twisted by the very people who were supposed to elevate it. NTHE World saw cinematic masterpieces. Scorsese saw sleepless nights, broken trust, and a growing question echoing in his mind. Was the art worth the pain? NHE once said in an interview, "Some actors are worth the pain. Others, they're just pain." It was more than a quote, it was a confession. Because by then, he'd seen what unchecked ego could do to even the purest creative vision. NBUT, what Scorsese didn't reveal, what Hollywood still whispers about, are the names and stories behind those painful lessons. The ones that nearly broke him, that made him question his loyalty to the very craft he worshipped. And as we peel back the layers of his career, we uncover the truth that fame tried to bury, that genius isn't just about what you create. It's about what it costs you to create it. When people talk about Martin Scorsese, one name always follows: Robert De Niro. To the public, they were a legendary duo, the director and his muse, the perfect storm of art and intensity. Together they built cinematic history: Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas. But what the audience never saw was the price of that partnership, how De Niro's dedication to his craft blurred the line between performance and possession, and how that same obsession almost tore their friendship apart. In the mid-1970s, Scorsese was still the ambitious New Yorker with dreams larger than the skyline. De Niro, already a rising star, was the embodiment of raw, unpredictable energy. When they came together for Taxi Driver, it was a match made in creative heaven and psychological hell. De Niro wasn't content with acting. He became his characters. For months, he lived as Travis Bickle, a lonely, disturbed taxi driver spiraling into madness. Non-set, the transformation was terrifying to watch. De Niro spoke like Travis, moved like Travis, even isolated himself from the rest of the cast and crew. During breaks, he'd sit alone in dark corners of the soundstage, muttering lines to himself. Crew members said it felt like he'd disappeared, replaced by someone else entirely. For Scorsese, it was both fascinating and frightening. The performance was brilliant, yes, but he started to wonder where De Niro ended and Travis began. Their relationship deepened during Raging Bull. This time, De Niro pushed his limits even further, gaining 60 pounds to play the older, broken version of boxer Jake LaMotta. The physical transformation was shocking, but it was his behavior that truly scared people. He trained like a real fighter, hit like a real fighter, and carried that aggression off camera. There were days when even Scorsese dreaded stepping onto the set. "You never knew which Bobby you'd get," he once admitted. The actor, or the animal, NFOR De Niro, it was method acting at its purest. For Scorsese, it was a descent into chaos. Every take felt like a battle. De Niro demanding absolute realism, Scorsese struggling to keep the production from imploding. The result was a masterpiece that won De Niro an Oscar and cemented Scorsese's legacy, but it also left emotional bruises that took years to heal. After Raging Bull, their bond changed. They still worked together, but something between them had cracked. A silent understanding that genius had its limits. Scorsese once confessed that he began to feel trapped by De Niro's intensity, like he couldn't direct him anymore, only survive him. Yet he could never deny what De Niro brought to the screen: truth, pain, humanity in its rawest form. Theirs was a friendship built on brilliance and fire, destined to burn but too beautiful to extinguish completely. They'd reunite years later for Goodfellas and Casino, but by then, the innocence was gone. What remained was respect, cold, distant, professional respect. And as Scorsese later reflected, Bobby became every man I feared and admired at once. Working with him was like staring into a mirror that showed not your reflection, but your madness. It's no wonder Scorsese's later films often explored obsession, guilt, and control, because he'd lived them through De Niro. The method madness that gave the world unforgettable cinema had nearly consumed them both, and yet that chaos became the foundation of Scorsese's career. It taught him that art without limits might win awards, but it also destroys peace. De Niro showed him what it means to suffer for art, and how that suffering can twist friendship into something unrecognizable. NBY, the end of their early years together. Scorsese understood one painful truth: some partnerships are too powerful to sustain forever. They don't fade quietly, they explode, leaving behind both beauty and ruin. When Martin Scorsese cast Sharon Stone in Casino, 1995, many thought it was a gamble even riskier than the film's title. Known for her icy beauty and commanding presence in Basic Instinct, Stone wasn't just another Hollywood starlet. She was a force, sharp, unpredictable, and hungry for validation beyond her sex symbol status. Scorsese saw something deeper in her, a chaotic brilliance that could electrify the screen. What he didn't realize was that her fire would nearly burn down the entire production. From the moment filming began in Las Vegas, tension simmered beneath the glitz and glamour. Stone's character, Ginger McKenna, was a woman of dangerous passion, a former hustler trapped in a golden cage of money, love, and betrayal. It was a role that required vulnerability, fury, and madness all at once. Stone threw herself into it with relentless energy. She demanded retakes, questioned direction, and even rewrote her own lines. Crew members whispered that she was possessed by Ginger, unable to switch off even when cameras stopped rolling. N.S. Scorsese, known for his patience and meticulousness, found himself tested like never before. Sharon was not De Niro or Pesci, actors who moved within his rhythm. She was unpredictable, emotional, and volatile. Some days she was dazzling, delivering performances so raw they stunned everyone on set. Other days she would storm off crying, accusing the director of not understanding a woman's breakdown. At one point, after an explosive argument with Joe Pesci, she refused to come out of her trailer for hours, and yet Scorsese never gave up on her. He knew the chaos was part of her magic. When Sharon was on, he later admitted she was unstoppable. She could shatter your heart in one scene and scare you in the next. But managing her energy was like taming a wildfire. He often had to shoot scenes in fragments, piecing together moments of brilliance from days of turmoil. Behind the scenes, Stone's personal life mirrored her on-screen destruction. She was going through heartbreak, battling insecurity, and constantly fighting the label of being just a sexy blonde. Scorsese became her unlikely therapist, listening to her tears and fury between takes. Their bond was complex, a mixture of artistic respect, fatherly concern, and creative frustration. "Marty believed in me when no one else did," Stone would later say, with tears in her eyes. "But he also broke me to rebuild me." When Casino finally premiered, the gamble paid off. Sharon Stone was mesmerizing. Her performance as Ginger earned her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination, silencing everyone who had doubted her. Critics called it the role of a lifetime. But Scorsese later admitted that the experience left scars. Directing Sharon was like walking a tightrope over fire. Every day you thought the line would snap. The irony was brutal. Stone's greatest performance came from her real pain, her rebellion against control. And Scorsese, the master of orchestrating chaos on screen, had found himself living inside it. After Casino, they never worked together again, not out of resentment, but mutual exhaustion. They had both given too much. Years later, Stone revealed in an interview, "Marty saw the part of me that was breaking, and he filmed it." That, perhaps, is the essence of Scorsese's genius. He doesn't direct actors to pretend. He exposes their truth, no matter how dangerous it gets. Sharon Stone's diva disaster became a legend, but beneath it lay one of the most emotionally charged collaborations in film history. A reminder that sometimes the most explosive performances come from the most fragile souls. When Martin Scorsese first met Leonardo DiCaprio in the early 2000s, Hollywood was skeptical. To many, Leo was still the Titanic kid, the poster boy of teenage obsession, not the kind of actor who belonged in Scorsese's dark, morally complex world. But Scorsese saw a spark, a restless ambition and hunger that reminded him of a young De Niro. He decided to take a chance. What he didn't expect was that this partnership would test his patience, his pride, and his very belief in mentorship. Their first collaboration, Gangs of New York, was a storm from the start. DiCaprio arrived, eager but anxious, constantly questioning himself and Scorsese's methods. He was young, already famous, and surrounded by the pressure of living up to impossible expectations. Leo wanted to prove he wasn't just a pretty face, one crew member recalled, but he also didn't want to be told what to do. Their creative tug-of-war often erupted into silence. Scorsese retreating into observation, Leo pacing in frustration, desperate to get it right. And at one point, after a particularly grueling scene with Daniel Day-Lewis, DiCaprio snapped. He felt overshadowed, humiliated, and told Scorsese he wasn't sure he could work like this. Scorsese didn't yell or plead. He simply said, "If you can't handle pain, you can't handle greatness." That line hit Leo like a brick. From that day, everything changed. What began as friction evolved into a bond of respect. DiCaprio started trusting Scorsese's brutal honesty, even craving it. Over the years, they created modern classics together. The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, The Wolf of Wall Street. Each film stripped away another layer of DiCaprio's boyish charm, replacing it with raw, unfiltered humanity. NBUT behind the praise was a strange, father-son tension. Scorsese pushed Leo to his limits, forcing him to confront his own ego. "He's fearless," Scorsese once said, "but fearlessness without humility is dangerous." NBY The Wolf of Wall Street. Their partnership had become a dance between madness and mastery. Leo's improvisations shocked the crew. His physical commitment terrified them. But Scorsese let him go. He'd learned when to pull the reins and when to let genius burn. What started as doubt had transformed into destiny. DiCaprio had become Scorsese's new muse, and together they proved that rebellion, when harnessed with discipline, could create legends. By the time Martin Scorsese encountered Joaquin Phoenix, he thought he had seen it all, from De Niro's obsessive preparation to Sharon Stone's emotional explosions. But Phoenix was different. He didn't just act a role, he became it, dissolving the line between man and character until even Scorsese couldn't tell where reality ended. Their rumored collaboration, a film that never fully materialized, became Hollywood legend. Phoenix's intensity was both magnetic and terrifying. He refused to read full scripts, preferring to discover his lines in the moment. During early rehearsals, he'd stay silent for hours, staring into the void, trying to feel the soul of his character. It unnerved everyone, including Scorsese. The director admired Phoenix's brilliance, but behind the admiration was unease. On one occasion, Phoenix reportedly refused to shoot a critical scene, claiming his character wouldn't do that. Scorsese, known for his calm authority, simply walked out of the set. For the first time in his career, he faced an actor whose chaos was too consuming, even for him. "It's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle," he once said privately. "Beautiful, but dangerous." NTHE project collapsed, but Scorsese never spoke ill of Phoenix. He knew true artistry often bordered on madness. Still, it left a mark. He began to wonder, had the pursuit of authenticity gone too far? Was he enabling destruction in the name of art? Then came Mickey Rourke, the actor who personified that very question. Once hailed as the next Brando, Rourke's self-destruction fascinated and horrified Scorsese. He had considered Rourke for several roles over the years, but by the time their paths aligned, Mickey was a shadow of his former self, bruised, bitter, and unpredictable. Scorsese saw pain in him, the kind that couldn't be faked. Their brief professional interactions were volatile. Rourke would show up late, forget lines, or disappear mid-scene. Yet, when the camera rolled, magic happened. Raw, wounded, and unfiltered. Scorsese described it as watching a man bleed emotion, but behind the brilliance was self-sabotage. Mickey wanted redemption, a crew member said, but he also wanted control. You couldn't give him both. It broke Scorsese's heart. He'd spent a lifetime working with difficult geniuses, but with Rourke, he saw the cost too clearly. The art was real, but so was the damage. After one explosive argument, Scorsese reportedly said, "You can't save someone who confuses pain for power." NBY then, the director's patience had worn thin. The romanticism of tortured artists had lost its glow. He began to see a pattern. Every masterpiece came with a wound. Phoenix's chaos, Rourke's destruction, Stone's rebellion, they all reflected the same truth. Brilliance often blooms in the dark, but it can just as easily consume itself. N.S. Scorsese once reflected, "Talent is a gift, but without control, it's a curse." That became his quiet philosophy in later years. He no longer chased storms. He learned to build calm around them. Yet, even now, he admits that part of him misses the madness. Because in those storms, in the shouting, the chaos, the heartbreak, he found the pulse of cinema itself. If there was one thing Martin Scorsese believed in, it was loyalty. He built his cinematic empire on trust, a bond forged through years of chaos and creation with actors like De Niro and Pesci. But even the strongest partnerships can fracture when ego and exhaustion collide. When Scorsese cast Jack Nicholson in The Departed, he expected brilliance and got something far more unpredictable. Nicholson didn't just perform, he took over. He arrived on set with his own ideas, rewriting lines, adding scenes, even bringing live guns and props to make it real. The crew whispered that Nicholson was directing himself, but Scorsese, rather than resisting, let the madness breathe. He knew Jack's unpredictability was part of his power. Still, behind the laughter and chaos, tension simmered. Nicholson's dominance threatened the balance Scorsese had carefully built. Leonardo DiCaprio, then at the height of his transformation, felt overshadowed. Every scene was a battle for control, a producer later recalled. It wasn't acting, it was survival. But somehow, Scorsese turned that tension into cinematic electricity. The Departed went on to win him his long-awaited Oscar. Yet the cost was emotional exhaustion. N.J.O.E. Pesci's story, however, struck even deeper. For years, Pesci had been Scorsese's secret weapon, the volatile soul behind Goodfellas, Casino, and Raging Bull. Their friendship was legendary, their trust unshakable. But when Scorsese approached him years later for The Irishman, Pesci initially refused, not once, but over 50 times. He'd grown tired of Hollywood, of violence, of the chaos that defined their work. To Scorsese, it felt like abandonment. Joe wasn't just an actor to me, he confessed. He was family. When Pesci finally agreed, it wasn't the same. The fire had dimmed, replaced by quiet restraint. Scorsese realized that time had changed them both. The energy that once fueled their masterpieces had left scars, personal, invisible, but permanent. That's when Scorsese learned his harshest truth. Even loyalty has an expiration date in Hollywood. Betrayal doesn't always come in anger. Sometimes it comes in silence, in distance, in the absence of what once was. And though The Departed and The Irishman cemented his legacy, they also marked the end of something sacred. The age when friendship and art could survive the storm together. In the long, glittering shadow of Martin Scorsese's career lies a name he will never utter. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not even in private conversations with his oldest friends. Those who worked close to him whisper about it. An actor so brilliant, so toxic, that their collaboration nearly destroyed everything Scorsese stood for. It's a chapter he's buried deep, a story Hollywood protects with uneasy silence. NTHE whispers trace back to the late 1990s, a period when Scorsese was between creative eras, caught between his gangster epics and his spiritual awakenings. He wanted to reinvent himself, to direct a film that would redefine morality and fame. Into that dream stepped the actor, charismatic, unpredictable, and famous for their intensity both on and off screen. To protect the project's reputation, Scorsese had agreed to secrecy clauses, but insiders say what happened during that production changed him forever. NTHE actor, already infamous for self-destructive behavior, saw Scorsese's set as their stage for domination. They demanded script changes, fired assistants, and publicly mocked crew members. Some say the outbursts went beyond artistic tension. They were psychological warfare. It wasn't just ego, one assistant recalled. It was cruelty disguised as genius. N.S. Scorsese, who had weathered the storms of De Niro, Stone, and Nicholson, tried to reason with them. But every conversation turned into a confrontation. The actor accused him of being outdated, of, quote, clinging to dead cinema. For Scorsese, a man who lived and breathed film, those words cut deeper than any insult. Their feud reached a breaking point when the actor allegedly walked off set mid-shoot, halting production for days. Studio executives begged Scorsese to fire them, but he refused. "You can't make art by running from pain," he told one producer. "You face it." In BUT this time, the pain didn't yield art. The film collapsed. The studio buried it quietly, citing creative differences. The actor vanished from Scorsese's world, and from then on, the director refused to discuss the project at all. To this day, the footage is locked away, unseen, whispered about as Scorsese's ghost film. What haunts him isn't the failure. It's the revelation that some talent is too poisonous to handle. He once said to a close friend, "There's a difference between suffering for art and suffering because of it." That distinction defined the rest of his life. From that moment, Scorsese changed. His later works, Silence, The Irishman, Killers of the Flower Moon, carried a new weight, a quieter melancholy. The chaos of youth was gone, replaced by reflection. He had finally learned that not every flame deserves to be fanned. And yet, that unnamed actor remains part of his legacy, a shadow at the edge of genius. Some claim Scorsese still keeps one photograph of them in his office, face turned away, a reminder of the price of brilliance unbound. Whether that story is truth or myth doesn't matter anymore. In Hollywood, legends are often built on secrets. And Martin Scorsese's greatest secret, the one he'll take to his grave, is that behind every masterpiece lies a name he refuses to remember.